Is today the day that our meeting conflicts with the TCC meeting? Okay. So we may have a lighter number of people today, yes? Okay. That will help us move forward, or know when to move forward, at least, depending on what our sign-ons look like.
Are they going to kind of coordinate relative to the other community meetings, like the TCC planning meeting?
Yes, this is our first unfortunate mess up in a whole year that we believe, at least. Last March was the last time we had this conflict. We checked the calendar every time, and then we just totally dropped the ball this time. So that's our bad for sure. But we do know that the TCC meeting lands on the second week of our second Wednesday of the month, on the last month of every quarter. So we caught up and we did a great job in June, and we did a good job in October. I think December was a weird one. Like we missed it because we had a weird, maybe we missed it.
Yeah, we moved it anyway,
Moved it anyway, yeah. So this one, we dropped the ball. So that's our bad. But usually we check that calendar. So we apologize profusely. Kimberly McCoy, who's very much involved in the TCC committee, came on to our agenda setting meeting, definitely let us know, and we apologize profusely. We asked her if we felt like we should move the meeting, and the consensus was, at least not this time, it was maybe a little too late, but we will, because we're doing a lot of sort of just brainstorming tonight, we're definitely going to send out all of the prompting questions that Erica's going to walk through. Really to everyone, but really specifically, we'll reach out to all of those folks we know were specifically at that TCC meeting and see what their feedback is, so we can capture it, for the district and ILG to take into account for the strategic planning efforts.
I see that we are streaming live on Facebook and recording, so I'll go ahead and just say good evening to everyone and let you all know that our AB 617 South Central Fresno Steering Committee meeting will begin in just a few moments. We're going to allow everyone to just get a second to log in. And then while you are waiting, if you're already on the line, please do see if you can change your screen name to make sure that your affiliation is showing. And we'll go into more detail about that in a few moments. But if you need any help doing that, we're happy to assist. The ILG team of Kim and Hannah are behind the scenes and can help rename you if you need. We'll start in just a few seconds.
Hey, Jamie.
Hey, lady, I love the long hair.
I told her that too.
Thanks, it's everywhere.
I wish it, my hair, this is me with a lot of body in my hair right now.
This is with me without, what is it, wind. Because I go full Diana Ross,
Nice. I like it.
Ain't no mountain high enough.
That's one of my favorite songs. You have to excuse me. I made what is called cowboy caviar, and I'm having it for dinner. It's tomatoes, avocado. It's like a salsa. Tomatoes, avocados, black beans, black-eyed peas, cilantro, corn, bell peppers, red onions, oil and vinegar, and some spices.
Oh, don't tell us that. We're going to have you cater the next meeting.
Come on over.
I think we all look forward to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
In person. Yeah, I think everybody's looking forward to not doing these through Zoom all the time.
Well, don't feel bad. My dog is like, I'm in a basically bag of greenies, Jamie.
So cute.
She literally grabbed the bag of greenies out of the dog park bag and looked at me. I'm like, really?
She knows what's up.
She's spoiled.
I got 3 of those at my house.
Nothing wrong with that.
Until they gang up on you.
I was just gonna say.
How you doing, Eric? How you been?
I'm doing good. I want to thank the Air District staff for printing this document out for me. That was like a big save.
We tried.
Just a little light reading for your weekend.
Right.
Sí,
I have-
yo puse en el chat puse.
Okay, gracias. We were just doing a check to see if we had
Gracias.
anybody in the interpreting channel. Si necesitan que ingresar al este canal de interpretación, por favor, está el icono del mundo que dice interpretación y puede seleccionar el idioma español. Yo creo que ya muchos de ustedes saben. Y luego silenciar el audio original en caso de que se escuchan doble idiomas. Okay, gracias.
Thank you, Mari. I think we've got a pretty good group on the line, so we're going to go ahead and get started so that we can stay on schedule. I want to welcome everyone again to the AB 617 South Central Fresno Community Steering Committee meeting. We are on meeting number 31, and we're so excited to see you all. My name is Erica Manuel. I'm the CEO of the Institute for Local Government, or ILG, and I am joined today by my colleagues Hannah and Kim, who are working behind the scenes to manage the logistics of this virtual Zoom meeting. They are waving their hands right now if you can't see their cameras. But before we go too far, I do want to check in with Mari and make sure that our Spanish-speaking attendees have everything that they need. I know that you just gave a little bit of instruction, but if you need to give any more, please do go ahead.
Okay. En ese momento, otra vez, como ya les había mencionado anteriormente, para seleccionar el idioma en español, seleccione el logotipo del mundo y el idioma español, y luego también para oprimir el botón de silenciar audio original, que significa Mute Original Audio, o es el botón de Mute Original Audio para silenciar su audio si escucha los dos idiomas. Y en caso de que tenga algún problema con la interpretación o se cae la llamada, puede llamar al número de teléfono que está en la pantalla, y ese número de teléfono es el 888-240-3210 y el código de acceso es el 23-78-69-1 y luego el signo de número, y así puede escuchar la reunión en español y todavía estar participando por Zoom si es necesario que algún problema tengamos en la reunión. En este momento, si tiene alguna pregunta, me puede decir en este momento. No escucho nada, entonces yo creo que vamos a poder proceder. We can continue, Erica. Thank you.
Thank you, Mari. So welcome to everyone who's joining us tonight. And again, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us on this, I think, rainy Wednesday. I think it's raining up and down the valley today. We are here tonight to continue to make progress on improving the air quality in South Central Fresno. And I think the rain definitely helps, but there's more that we can do. My role in this meeting this evening will be to be your facilitator. So I'll be here to make sure all your voices are heard, that our tone and our discussions are respectful, and that we accomplish all the key objectives from our agenda. And my job is also to try and stay on schedule and make sure that our meeting starts on time and ends on time. And so we're going to move forward as quickly as we can. As many of you know, these CSC meetings started with in-person meetings more than 18 months ago, and we have been doing Zoom meetings now for quite some time, but we're still navigating that technology. And so we are going to go through a few Zoom controls in just a few moments. But first, let's see what our agenda is for today. Showing on your screens is the agenda that we discussed and has been shared with you all via email. Today, we're going to start with some introductions from our community co-host and our Air District host, and then we're going to move into a continuation of the annual planning, which we started at the last month's meeting, and that we're going to continue today. And then we're going to move into some updates, the standing updates you're so used to seeing, which is our monitoring update, some of our committees, and then our CARB update. And then we're going to wrap up, and we're going to move into the next phase. So while we are moving forward, I'd like to ask my colleague Kim to give a quick refresher on the Zoom controls for any of you who are new to this meeting or joining us for the first time.
Thanks, Erica. Thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Just a couple of reminders to please stay on mute throughout the meeting. If you're planning to speak, you can raise your blue Zoom hand and ask a question or use the chat box. And when you're using the chat box, just a reminder to use the @ symbol when replying to someone so we can easily track comments. And a reminder that the chat box is not private, so to always be respectful. And if you're using two devices, one for video and one for phone, you can link the two accounts by using your participant number. You just have to press the pound sign and your participant ID, and it will connect the two. But if you ever have any questions, you can go ahead and reach out to me or Hannah, and we will help you out. And just a reminder that this meeting is being recorded.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So as you know, we do not do a formal roll call anymore, but we do ask that all of the CSC members actively change their screen names so that we can track your attendance and your participation. That renaming process is really important. And along those lines, I will ask him or Hannah if there is anyone that needs to be renamed now for the purposes of tracking their attendance and potentially receiving a stipend if they are a resident.
I am not seeing any unnamed participants.
Excellent. And for our Spanish speakers, if there are any Spanish speakers that are in the same location or any CSC members who are in the same location, if you can please put your names in the chat. If you're sharing a screen or a phone, we definitely don't want to not count you as attending this meeting. We do also acknowledge that today's meeting conflicts with another TCC planning meeting. And so we do have a lighter attendance today, but again, we are recording this meeting and we are also going to make sure that the notes are shared with all CSC members. All right. So I am now going to pass it over to Ryan with the Air District and then our community co-host Nyameen for their welcome. Ryan and Nyameen, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, yes. So good to see everybody. We were just talking about it and how hopeful we are to soon be able to have some of these meetings in person and we can see each other once again face to face and share dinner and conversation and just hope to see everybody doing well and families are doing well and excited to continue to work on this process with all of you. And at this point, I'm always happy to turn it over to our co-host, and I'm so thankful for Nyameen for volunteering very graciously to fill the role tonight. So thank you.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes, buenas noches. Good afternoon, Nyameen Martinez. And I didn't volunteer, I was asked, but it's a pleasure for me. And the reason it's a pleasure for me because I think it's time to take this meeting back. It's our meeting. And we need to be more than co-hosts just saying, hello, I'm here, and then goodbye, thank you for being here. We need to be more proactive in really what the items are and how we handle this discussion because these are our meetings. So my dear friends, I'm here for you and with you, and I invite you to jump over the agenda as much as you want. This is our meeting and we need to take ownership of it and not only talk when you know, they're giving us the time to, we need to take it back to the residents and the spirit of AB 617 and the steering committee. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Nyameen. And as a reminder, at the last meeting, I did promise you exactly that we would try and get more input from the residents and from our quieter participants. So please do not be surprised if we call on you or if we ask you for your thoughts. We definitely want to make sure this discussion is balanced and it reflects your community priorities. That is the intent. And it's so important for this work that we're doing in South Central Fresno. So in advance of that, I will say thank you for your flexibility while we work through this planning process. And feel free, now's your chance to speak up, and it will be your chance to speak up through every meeting moving forward, not just this one. So we're grateful for all of your participation and eager to have you play an even stronger and larger role in these meetings moving forward. So I'm going to ask that we move to the slides again. And I want to give you a quick refresher about what we're doing today and how we're going to approach it. And again, this is really to get input from this committee about what has worked, what has maybe needs a little bit of adjustment, and how we can move forward together. So over the past month, we've talked about how to really think about planning in 2021. And we're in the first quarter of the year still, and it's important for us to, at the beginning of the year, really think about the approach we wanted to take. And as you mentioned, you wanted to explore what's working well, what needs adjustment, and how to make those plans moving forward as it relates to the agendas and the topics that you discussed. So here are some major buckets of how the CSC operates and the goals for your implementation. And so if you recall at the last meeting, we wanted to talk about these three things: administration, reporting and tracking, and the SERP strategies. And as you know, our goal with the SERP is to reduce emissions, but it's also really important for us to make sure that administratively we're covering all the right things. So this slide really speaks to what we're going to get done over the course of our planning, which is in three categories. We've already done the administration conversation. That happened last week or last month. And this evening, we're going to talk about reporting and tracking and then begin the conversation about SERP prioritization. Next slide, please. So anytime you start a planning process, we just want to make sure that you all know and agree on what you want to accomplish. If you were here at the last meeting, you will recognize this slide. But if you weren't here at the last meeting, this is just a reminder of what we want to accomplish so that we're all on the same page about the key outcomes. We're definitely going to agree on the reporting process and the administrative elements. And then we're also going to make sure we understand how to prioritize the SERP measures for 2021. And then we're going to leave some time to talk about any other activities you really want to accomplish this year as a committee, and then give you some time to think about your definition of success. So those are some of the things that we will accomplish with this planning process, which should go for 2 meetings, up to 2 meetings after this one.
And Erica, I wonder if we can show the slide in Spanish as well. So our Spanish-speaking participants can just take a moment and read, because not everything fits in one slide, both languages.
Perfect. Thank you, Hannah. As you will see, we are going to continue to do dual translation. We'll do English language. I'll speak in English, but we'll also be doing translation in Spanish in real time. And we'll do our best to make sure that the Spanish language slides show up on the screen as well.
And while that happens, Erika, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So it's true that we spent last meeting talking about the administrative things that we had thought were working and not working. And if I'm not mistaken, one clear recommendation of the group was that the co-host, or whomever takes that role, it has been residents, it has been advocates, and even city representative. So they play a more active role other than just doing the opening remarks or the closing remarks. And with that being already a recommendation, we're in the new meeting and nothing happened in terms of changing that dynamic. How is that going to change moving forward? How is the co-host going to be more engaged in playing an important role or a more prominent role throughout the meeting, not just the beginning and the end?
Yeah, that's a good comment. So we did talk about it briefly during the meeting at the last CSC meeting, but we had a really robust conversation during the agenda setting meeting. So what we can do is talk a little bit about that today and think about what the committee would like to do, what that looks like. We want to be respectful of everybody's individual preferences and comfort levels, but we also want to be open-minded and think about how can we best integrate you into the meetings when you are the co-host. So we absolutely have the opportunity to talk about it today, and we have the opportunity to adjust every month, depending on what the agenda and topics include and what the expertise of the CSC member is that's hosting. So, and interest, right? So I think we have a lot of opportunity, and we'd love that feedback today and moving forward so that we can continue to refine that process.
And if I can add, not only the feedback, but Naimeen, you as co-host today, your opening remarks and the way you said that it is your meeting today, please, I think it would be great if you would demonstrate, obviously we didn't get the chance ahead of time to work with you, but if you want to please demonstrate as we move through these, the leadership that you want to take as the co-host today, and that can certainly serve as one of the models for folks moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thanks for that question. All right, so today's topic is really about reporting, tracking, and how to prioritize strategies. And what we're going to do is, you can see on this slide, is we've got English in the top and Spanish along the bottom. And what we're going to cover today is really the specifics of the reports that you're receiving and the tracking that you're getting, and how you are interpreting that, what's working really well, and some suggestions for improvement as we move forward. When we get into asking and answering these questions, Marcella with the Air District is going to take live notes in Spanish, and I'm going to take them in English, and we'll toggle back and forth so that our Spanish speakers can see every comment in Spanish. As a quick disclaimer, as you know from the last month, it is not easy to do this over Zoom, so there will be quite a bit of toggling, but what we can promise you is that you will have notes, you will be able to see it live, and you'll be able to make real-time adjustments. And we do want to give everyone the chance to weigh in, which is really important for this process and incredibly, I think, important for your plan for the year moving forward. So as we mentioned, reporting and tracking includes quite a few things. And as you can see on the screen, we've organized it in 5 buckets. Reporting about subcommittee activities, website updates, reporting from other agencies like CARB, DPR, the city, and then reporting about air monitoring and reporting about the CERP implementation process. We're also going to talk a little bit about how to engage the co-hosts more. And we're also going to talk about how to move forward with the CERP prioritization in the second half of our discussion. So we've got a lot to cover in about an hour or less, and so we're going to go quickly, but we're also going to try and track both your chat comments and your verbal comments. We do have a smaller group today, so hopefully we'll be able to capture as many feedback into items from our participants as possible, but in general, we tend to run a little light on time, so we're going to move through quickly. But again, this is your meeting, and we do want to make sure that your comments and feedback are incorporated. So one thing to note on the next slide is a slightly different process that I'd like to focus on today, which is about how to have a productive discussion and a respectful dialogue. Anytime we do annual planning with a large group and you ask for feedback, both constructive or otherwise, I like to share some suggested guidelines for how to provide feedback in a way that is productive, but maybe not offensive. And this is a list of things on the screen for how to maybe have that dialogue. If you can, please help achieve the planning goals by focusing on solutions and opportunities. We also ask that you let everyone participate, step up and step back, and give others the chance to weigh in. Obviously, be civil and respectful, understanding that it is perfectly normal for a committee of this size to disagree, but please just be respectful, empathetic, and remember that everyone is likely trying their best. We ask that you stay on point and on time. And again, we have a pretty strong agenda today. We want to keep our comments as brief as possible, to the point, but then we will capture it all in writing and make sure that you get the notes after the words. An important one is to attack the problem and not the person. As we go through and talk about what's working well and what's not working well, we would love for you to remember to challenge the idea or the outcome, but not the person individually, and honor that that person has both humanity and dignity. And last, we hope that you will seek common ground, because with a committee of this size, building consensus, agreeing on goals, finding shared value, all of that will help with achieving your results. So with that, we do ask that we dive in, and I'm going to let the Spanish slide stay up for just a second while the translators interpret and that the Spanish speakers can read. While we are waiting, I will also ask if anybody has any questions before we move forward with the process that we began last month and will continue today. And I'm going to ask Hannah and Kim actually to see if there are any hands, because I cannot see any.
I don't see any hands, but I see a good question in the chat. Wondering if everyone will get the notes or just the committee members in the Air District. Like if members of the public or, you know, yeah.
That's a great question for the Air District to answer. What is the process for sharing the notes related to the strategic planning session? I know that we are collecting them all after our 3rd or 4th meeting, and you will disseminate them. What is that dissemination plan, Air District team?
We will post them online.
Perfect. Thank you.
And send out a link when they're posted.
Great. Hannah, you can stop share. I am going to share my screen, and we're going to pull up the notes and the reporting for this process. All right, so the first box that we are going to address is reporting about subcommittee activities. What we want to understand is what's working well, what's not working well, what maybe are some suggestions that you might have about how you're currently getting information about the subcommittees, what they're doing, and how those things are moving forward. I will ask Hannah and Kim and Naomi maybe to look at the hands and see who's open and who's able to kind of give their feedback on this particular item, and I will take notes.
Will do. Who wants to start the comments on what has worked well or what can be improved? ¿Algunos comentarios de lo que no ha funcionado o lo que debe de mejorarse?
Bueno, yo tengo un comentario.
I have a comment.
No sé si sea relevante con esto, pero mi comentario es, yo pienso que ya como unos 2 meses, yo les dije que había comprado unas máquinas y dijeron que me iban a dar que me iban a ayudar con los gastos de la compra y hasta ahorita no tengo ninguna respuesta de nada. No sé qué está pasando.
I bought some machinery about 2 months ago, and I was told that I was going to be helped with some of the expenses that I had, but no one has gotten in touch with me, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do now.
Thank you, Isabel. That's definitely something that has to be followed up by the Air District staff that is in charge of those, incentive programs. So I don't know if you guys want to give a quick response now or take it offline and follow up with Isabel, but just make sure that she gets an answer before the next meeting, because sometimes those things to follow up are, fall through the cracks. So very important to follow up with her, please. And I saw Edward's hand up.
Thank you, Naimeen. Just for the ask of what's working well, I really appreciate the subcommittees. For those that have particular interests in certain subjects, and I'm very interested in the vegetative barriers and urban greening. I think that committee's worked really well. And I'm also interested in the truck rerouting studies. And I think we had a strong discussion regarding that last time. So just my comment on what I think is working well.
Thank you, Ed.
Vegetative barrier. Perfect.
And Erica, I did see a hand from Larry, but it went down. So I'm not sure if he has something that he wanted to add, or maybe it was already covered.
No, his hand is up.
Go ahead, Larry.
Okay. I was talking about, thinking about the SERP and reading what was sent out. And I'm concerned about the residential burning, RB1 and RB3. Replace wood burning devices and enhance enforcement of wood burning curtailments. And this is I was thinking we should start thinking about this next season. Past season's over, but it seems like we never get, we need to get more registered fireplaces, more gas burning fireplaces, and get the message out better. It seems, 1,640 throughout the district were registered fireplaces. There should be probably 16,000. And I don't know how that's going to happen. And as far as enforcement, you need something that takes a picture at night when people are burning their fireplaces, because that's when they burn them. When it's cold, nobody can see their fires burning in a fireplace. Mm-hmm. And you need to have a quicker response from the inspectors. I had a condition back at the end of January, 1st February, where I don't know, the air quality was off the scale. I don't know, it was 160 or something when I called at 10 o'clock. And the person didn't show up until 9 o'clock the next morning. It was 10 p.m. It was very bad. And overnight, the air quality, the bad air quality went way down. And by the time she was here, it was down to 13 or something. And but the man that took the call didn't give her the correct gate code to enter my place. Anyway, there's maybe some kind of internet connected devices. I know I've seen them on the internet where you can take pictures at night and transmit them back maybe to the air district and follow up with the address. But what's going on isn't working. We had way too much smoke in the check before you burn time of the year. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ed. And I see, Ryan, I know you have your hand up, but I will give priority to Ivanka if you don't mind.
And if I can just interject really quickly, Erica, can you make your screen just a little bit bigger, please? Thank you.
Absolutely, one sec. And what I'm doing is I'm putting in italics things that might go in another section when we get to the other parts. So I'm just going to type everything in the order that you give it to me, and then we'll move it to where it needs to go.
Yeah,
Mari,
I
is
agree.
this big enough?
Sorry?
I was just checking with Mari to see if it's big enough. Great. Sorry, Naomi.
No, I was just going to say that's true because I was thinking that Ed's suggestions are not totally pertain to the subcommittees, but certainly important as it relates to some of other sub-strategies that we might need to discuss, you know, in the later on in the meeting. Ivanka?
First, were there any responses that needed to be, were there any responses that needed to be said to any of the comments that were just made?
I imagine Ryan and Jessica that have their hands up might have some comments to the specific.
So if you have something to respond, go ahead, because
she's not in no. So go ahead.
Okay. I was actually looking at what was working well, the way I interpreted this, working well, or suggestions for the subcommittees that we've had so far. Like Ed said, urban greening, the truck reroute subcommittees, I feel like are going well. They're informative, good conversation. I do know we've stated before that with the air monitoring subcommittee, gathering that group, if there's any new sparked interest of other folks that may not have been involved in the very beginning when we were doing placement and location, now would be a good time for folks to get back on that subcommittee going forward. Especially now, I see the priority of now that we have the data rolling in, that subcommittee may need to be one of the primary conversations in the primary agendas of the steering committee, not necessarily, it can of course start as a subcommittee, but that is a heavy lift and it requires everybody from the committee to be involved because that's half of this grant is the air monitoring. And so it really shouldn't be just its own subcommittee, especially when we need to have that full conversation of now that we see the data, how are we linking this to the actions of enforceability? And regarding what suggestions I have for 2021, I'm concerned with it. We are a small group. Each measure may need a subcommittee, some may not, and really needing full engagement from everybody and not just the few that are involved. It will stretch us then to try to break this all up into multiple subcommittees. Some of this will need to just remain at the main table.
Thank you, Ivanka.
Thank you so much.
And I know that Jessica and Ryan, your hands are still up, but I saw Genevieve's hand going up. Do you mind if I go first to her?
Yeah, Genevieve can
okay, I'll jump in. I just wanted to agree with Ivanka because I'm not a part of all of the subcommittees and I truly feel in the dark about a lot of these issues. I'm going through the document that was sent out by the district, linked in their email about where we are on different issues. And a lot of the issues that I really care about, there's been zero progress, or at least that's the way this chart makes it look, because there's been zero funding or 0 units. Like I would love to see zero emission or near zero emission trucks in these truck replacements in this community, but I see 0 units funded. Vegetative barriers. I'd love to see the MOU, more community involvement in land use. I'm seeing no progress, and I'm assuming that there is progress being made on these subcommittees. And so I think it would be helpful if issues were regularly brought back to the larger committee so we could hear what's going on. Perhaps it doesn't look as bleak as this chart makes it appear, or maybe it is and we have a lot of work to do. Same is true with the stationary sources. I don't think I've heard about the stationary sources since about a year ago. And so really concerned about the progress we're making or lack of progress we're making, and also the fact that I feel very much in the dark about a lot of this.
Thank you, Genevieve. And I see Estella's hand up. Estela, ¿tiene un comentario?
Sí, buenas tardes a todos. Mi comentario es de que sí teníamos una reunión con nos reunimos más bien con, ¿cómo se llama la concejal que nos reunimos esta mujer? Como ya no me acuerdo. La concejal, sí, Esmeralda. Pues sí, nos reunimos con ella, pero no hubo nada en concreto con ella. Yo pienso que deberíamos de seguir reuniendo con todos los que están incluidos en el mapa, con los demás concejales, y seguir empujando a decirles a ellos también que nos estén apoyando también, porque ellos también tienen tienen que hacer su trabajo también. Y pienso que Esmeralda Soria, siendo nomás de ella sola, no vamos a poder avanzar. Sí necesitamos que estén los demás concejales del mapa, los que están incluidos, y también mirar también como los, no mirar nomás en los fondos de las organizaciones, porque aquí ya tenemos los fondos. A veces decimos, pues hay que recurrir a esta organización para que esta organización tiene fondos y así nos puede también apoyar. No, es que aquí en el Distrito del Aire ya tenemos los fondos para seguir adelante con lo que tenemos en proyecto para seguir cambiando la contaminación del aire. Ese es otro también que yo pienso que deberíamos de saber en qué organizaciones debemos de apoyarnos, porque a veces ellos pueden decir, oh, pues no hay fondos, pero también en el Distrito del Aire pues hay fondos. Gracias.
Gracias, Estela. I just want to add that in the chat, Lilia kind of echoed the same remarks, saying districts 1, 3, and 7 are the ones that should also be included. So thank you for your patience, Jessica and Ryan. Maybe ladies first.
And just before we move forward, I want to make sure I get the translation for that so that Mari can translate it too. Can we get a quick summary of that one?
Yes, of course. The caller was mentioning that she participated in a few meetings with the council person, Esmeralda, and the meetings continued, but they didn't arrive to anything concrete. I believe she believes that in order to push forward, we need to make sure to keep these meetings with the rest of all the council people. We need their support to be able to move ahead, because Esmeralda cannot do anything by herself, everything by herself. Also, I see that we keep talking about funds and the need for funds, but I believe that we do have those funds available. I believe that the Air District already has those funds, and we just need to start getting organized and move forward with the project.
Thank you.
Gracias,
Gracias, Estela, about the so I don't know if everybody is getting it. Apparently some English speakers are not receiving the interpretation. Is that correct? Or everybody is able to, those that are needing interpretation from the Spanish to the English, are you hearing the conversation in English?
That one we're doing live, Nayamin. So Jose will do it after the Spanish speaker. So it's not simultaneous for that one.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
No problem.
Thank you for that. So in the interest of time, I do want to move on. Do we have any more questions before we move to the next category?
Well, Jessica and Ryan have had their hand up for quite a while now, so I don't know if we should give them the floor.
I'll go.
Absolutely.
I kind of just almost to participate in this and give kind of to what Naimeen was saying at the beginning of the meeting, as a co-host for the main meeting. What's really I found that I like, and hopefully if you guys agree, in the subcommittee meetings, the ownership that's been taken on by, in this particular case, in the vegetative barrier subcommittee by Naimeen, and her fellows that she has. I think in my mind, it sounds like that type of ownership, at least for certain types of subcommittees where we do have expertise on the committee, that it works really well. And I definitely wanted to just sort of give kudos to Naimeen and Yesenia and Aurelio for the way that they've run that.
Thank you, Jessica. Ryan?
Yeah, I just wanted to address some of the comments and concerns, starting with Larry. We do have night vision cameras that when we take pictures of it, it's almost like during the day. I mean, we get good images with the technology that we have. And here the issue that Larry had with the complaint that he filed and the challenges with that. Nighttime surveillance is definitely, typically what we did or what we do is we send people out in pairs because of the, safety concerns with people driving and trying to take pictures at the same time. And we found that we're able to conduct much more surveillance at night when we have people in pairs. And obviously during this past season, COVID, posed a significant challenge to that. We still did do nighttime surveillance. It's just that we have a limited, they don't cover as much ground basically when they do it. It's much more limited because our expectation that everybody does it in a very safe manner, because we definitely, we don't want to potentially endanger the public if we're trying to look for fireplaces and at the same time trying to drive. So we just had to make some adjustments there that hopefully in this as more vaccines and get rolled out more, and then we get into next season, we can definitely look into how we do that nighttime surveillance. In regards to some of the concerns about the speed at which the funds are getting spent, we are trying so hard to get this rolling more. And you're starting to see that we are starting to spend some of these funds. And I know Jamie and Heather are going to be working a lot with the community members on the outreach and how to get out to the maximum extent possible, and using all the input from the CSC members. And I know we had a great suggestion about using one of the CSC members' personal Facebook pages, and that we have a commitment to get a flyer to her so she can get it out there, and so all of her neighbors can get electric lawn equipment. And that's definitely a commitment that we're going to follow through on and get out to her right away. And then, but at the same time, take a lot more information from the steering committees. To Genevieve's point about heavy duty zero emission replacement, I did drop in, I think I dropped in the link to the incentives page. So if you look at that table that Genevieve's referring to, there's a column in there, and it says whether or not we need to submit a project plan to CARB in order for us to be able to expend those funds. And then it'll say yes or no in that column for the various incentives. And because this committee came up with a lot of community identified projects that didn't have existing guidelines, we do have to go through this process, and it has taken quite a bit of time. We would like to say that we like to have seen that it maybe move a little bit faster, but we understand the reasons for it, and we continue to work with CARB to get them the information to try to get these project plans turned around as quickly as possible. If I can also drop in a link to the state page. So far, we're the only districts that submitted these project plans and we've gotten them approved. No one else, in any of the other communities have community identified projects that have gone through the process and have gotten approved. We have 5 to date, and we actually have another 4 that are in the queue, and we're, the next one that we're working on and prioritizes the vegetative barrier and urban greening. And during the last subcommittee, we got some really great feedback from that subcommittee. And so we're hoping to have that wrapped up and turn around. And I know Todd's on here, and I know his team had been working on taking all those recommendations and trying to get that wrapped up and turned in. And at the same time, we're very hopeful that there's a project plan that Imperial County submitted for that same measure. It's similar in nature. So we're hoping that, when we submit the one for South Central Fresno and for Shafter, that since it's kind of following a lot of the same, that it can get adopted really quickly. We can move forward with these really great projects. But just to let everybody know, so we have 4 project plans in right now. It's the electric vehicle charging infrastructure. It's EV mechanic training, training people in the AB 617. It's job skill building, which I know was very important to the steering committee. Heavy duty truck replacement, which is the zero emission that Genevieve was talking about, and then the zero emission yard truck replacement program. So trying to get those zero emission vehicles to help out. So thanks.
Erica, I would like to add one more thing before we move on. I think that, definitely there's already all this work happening, but I think the problem is that we have not heard about it. I know that the time in the meetings is, tight. So I would recommend that at least we get a summary, like a table that has all these other strategies that are being implemented by the Air District staff, either by submitting the project to CARB or already funding some of these when they have the ability. I also think that it would be very important that the notes for the subcommittee meetings are also posted so that people who cannot join the meetings because we cannot be in every place at a time can also have that resource available, and that there's some sort of actionable summary that is presented in these meetings so that people know, okay, if I cannot attend the meeting, at least this is something I can do, or I can participate in this particular item. And I see 2 more hands, and I know you're going to want us to move ahead, but I think it's important to be open to hear the community members' opinions. So Ivanka and then Ed.
Some of what I wanted to say is very similar to what Nyameen just stated. I would like to add, though, that importance of knowing what's in the queue, what has been submitted. As an overall steering committee, I don't think that, back to what Genevieve, that does feel like we are a little bit in the dark. And it also brings me back to the resolution of February of last year. If these are the measures that are being put forth to CARB, but we haven't actually strategized what are the priority measures that the committee wants to put forward. I know we're trying to get ahead of that now through this process, but this is concerning because where does that leave room for what the resolution stated, which was if the steering committee decided that we were not in agreement with or wanted to rearrange where funding is actually placed, but the Air District is submitting these plans ahead of us that we're not aware of, it's going to start setting in stone those funding amounts before we have really said, yes, we are 100% in agreement with. So it feels like we're a little bit walking backwards instead of in the right order of things.
Thank you, Ivanka.
That makes sense.
The only thing I wanted to add to this is if we're looking at ways to make the subcommittees more efficient and to bring that message back to the steering committee, maybe we ought to look at a for lack of a better term, a chair position where there's one individual that is seen as the leader for that subcommittee and is responsible to come back to our meetings and actually report, not just in a summary, written summary form, but in a verbal manner that allows everyone to understand and have an opportunity to ask questions. And it kind of goes along your line of, Naimeen, of taking more responsibility while we're working with the air district. Certainly the air district's doing, you know, the yeoman's effort regarding, you know, trying to make sure that all of these things are addressed along the way. And I'm appreciative of that. And as the subcommittee chairperson, would be able to work closer with the air district for that summary for each meeting. That was my input. I didn't write it well in the chat, and I apologize.
No, I think that's really good, Ed. So I just want to say that last item here is that there was a similar question raised by Keith Lowen in the chat. So what had been the elements or items that have been approved by CARB, and which ones are in the queue? So that, you know, address the issue of we don't know. You know, that's an area that needs to be improved. That communication of what is in the queue and, you know, what the residents and the steering committee members wanted.
The reason, and thank you for that, one of the reasons I have it in italics is that the second half of this planning discussion will be about how you want to get information about the SERP and how you want to do that prioritization. So I put those in italics so we could move that down to that section. And when we do talk about that, it's absolutely relevant for today's meeting. I want to be mindful of the fact that I know Mari's translating, and I want to stop and let the Spanish language speakers see the Spanish translation for this before we move to the next items. And I see that you guys have the hang of this. You're doing great. And we're going to go a little faster on these to make sure we cover the SERP prioritization, which I think is what you really want to get to. So I want to make sure you have that time as well. I'm going to stop share so Mari can start, and then we will begin going through the other boxes.
Okay. Aquí está el informe o las cosas que se reportaron. Déjeme ver si lo puedo hacer un poquito más grande para que lo puedan leer. Y aquí sí pueden nomás dar un repaso rápido para ver si se les pasó o se me pasó algo o necesito que incluir algo a cambiar algo. Me pueden decir en este momento. Lo puedo bajar un poquito más. ¿Algún comentario de Estela, Isabel o Lilia?
Pues mi comentario es que me gusta cómo están trabajando con el área vegetativa.
Ok.
De los árboles que van a plantar, es algo muy bonito que, pues sí, me gusta la idea de que vayan a plantar algo nuevo, árboles nuevos, y eso pues sí me encanta.
Okay. My comment is that I really like the work that you guys are doing with the vegetation, the planting of new trees. I really like that idea. I like it a lot.
Great. Thank you for that. And we're going to move on to the next category, and I'm going to ask that we go pretty quickly just so we can go through these fast. I think you've got some great feedback so far. Like I said, some of it belongs in the other category, so I'm flagging it and we'll move it down. I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to go in English and talk about the next category, which is website updates. What's working really well, and what are some suggestions you have for 2021? Do we like how it's going? Do you like the links that are sent? Do you feel like it's easy to find? Everything is where you need it. You know where to go and you know what to get, and it's updated in a timely manner. Are you feeling like you've got what you need?
And I do see a hand from Lisa.
No.
My only concern is if you're a member of the public and you go onto the website, things are kind of hard to find. And I believe in the 3-click rule, that if you can't find your information within 3 clicks, then your page is really poorly designed. And people get frustrated and turn it off. So I would just like to remind your designers of the 3-click rule.
Thank you, Lisa. I have a comment while we see other hands up. I think that it's not exactly only regarding the website, but it's connected. And that has to do with the recommendation that we had made several times about the information of the monitors that were deployed as AB617, more easily accessible and accessible to anyone, not only the people who know about AB617, especially those, for example, that have children or are parents of the schools where these monitors are placed. They have no idea how to find this information. And we have made that recommendation, and it has still not done. Neither it has been combining the information of these air monitors into your existing list of regulatory monitors and the run. Because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that this information is widely accessible to everyone. So that has not happened, and you know, it's important that I would like to emphasize that this has to be done.
Great, thank you. One point of note, if you see anything that I write on this screen that doesn't accurately reflect what you've said, feel free to put it in the chat or just raise your hand and let me know to revise it, but I've tried to paraphrase much of what I hear from you all.
And I do see that Estella's hand is up.
Hi, Estella.
Pues mi comentario era que pues ahorita sí estamos bien con el aire, ¿verdad? Porque ahorita los niños no están yendo a la escuela, pero ¿qué va a pasar cuando los niños vayan a la escuela? El aire no va a estar muy bien como ahorita. Va a estar más sucio. También me gustaría que incluyeran más autobuses. Hay en otros distritos que han incluido más bases. Ese es otro comentario que yo tenía. Ahorita sí el aire lo tenemos un poco bien porque los niños no van a la escuela.
I have a couple of comments to make. The first one is that the quality of the air right now, it's doing okay because our kids are not going to school, but what's going to happen in the future? What's going to happen after that? And my other comment is that we need more buses. I know that other districts have buses, so we need more.
And Derek, I'm also seeing a hand from Isabel when you're done.
Yo estoy bien en el sitio del internet, sí está bien para mí.
Stella was having issues with the internet, and she's saying that it's fine now.
Oh, okay.
No, I think she was referring that the website was fine.
Oh, okay, so it's gotten better.
Yes.
Any other comments about the website before we move on to the next category?
Hey, real quick, just on the Naimeen's point, I just want to make sure that...
Sí, tengo un comentario. Okay.
And John, if I'm stealing your thunder later on when you're giving your AB617 air monitoring.
Ryan, can I stop you for a second? Isabel is trying to give a comment. I'm sorry. Adelante, Isabel.
Sí, mi comentario es que yo apenas estoy empezando con a mover la computadora. Es un poco difícil para mí, y llegar hasta donde está la información. Entonces quisiera ver si se podía hacer un poquito menos difícil para poder ingresar a la información que uno quiera buscar.
My comment is that I just started working with computers, and this is a bit difficult for me. So I'm just asking if you could please make it less difficult so that it's easier to access the information.
Mm. So I'm going to take this one off and say that there's still some navigation challenges for new Spanish. Got it.
I think that would go under the 3-click rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Thanks, Naomi. So real quick, so Lisa, on the 3-click rule, is that to get to the main South Central Fresno page, or?
Basically, that's to get whatever information you want. It doesn't really matter. I mean, I recently went on your page to look for something, and it took me 7 to find out the information that I needed, and I almost gave up on after 3. Because the way you guys have it set up, you either have to think like you belong to you're an employee of the air district, and it's not consumer friendly. So you have to think like the member of a public, and you have to think they're only going to stick around for 3 clicks before they give up and go away.
Okay.
So, whether you do it, I know that you list things and maybe some tabs, maybe a different format of how you design your web page.
Yeah.
Kim, Hannah, or Nayamin, do we have any additional comments or questions? I think, Lisa, that I reflected your notes here. Please make sure that I did it accurately. And then for those that have...
I'm sorry, but it's too small for me to read. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll see. Tell me when it's big enough.
I don't see any hands, Erica.
Thank you. Can
We
you
do
see
have
that, Lisa?
That's fine.
We do have a question posed in the chat from Edward asking if some training would be helpful for the new computer users.
It is a good question. And maybe for our Spanish speakers or any others that are new to technology, or maybe don't know how to navigate that website, would a training be helpful for you?
Yo creo que sí, para mí sí.
It would help me, I believe so.
Great, thank you. All right, I want us to move on to the next items and go quickly through that. While I am transitioning to the Spanish slides, any final comments on the website? Okay, Mari, I'm going to stop share and then I'll let you share what's been said so the Spanish speakers can see it.
Ok, aquí está la presentación en español. Ahorita lo único que me falta es el último punto de hacerle el entrenamiento de navegación del Internet. ¿Tienen alguna pregunta?
No.
Ok. Si está todo bien, entonces vamos a pasar con Erica. Thank you.
Excellent. And we are going to move on to the next categories. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one more single category and then I'm going to consolidate so that we can go even faster and make sure we meet your timelines. Our next topic is how you feel about the reports that are coming from the other agencies. That could be CARB, DPR, the City of Fresno. Are you getting the information that you need? Do you like the way they're reporting back to you verbally or written? Otherwise, what suggestions do you have for how that can be adjusted if needed in 2021? And I can't see hands, so I'm going to ask my illustrious colleagues, Hannah, Nyamine, and Kim, if you can let me know if you see anybody.
I'm looking, I don't see any hands. Come on, guys, don't be shy.
To clarify, Erica and I mean, the comments via chat are welcome as well as committee members prefer to distribute. Yeah, if it's easier for you to type in the chat what's working well or suggestions for 2021, Naimeen and ILG will keep an eye on it and we'll make sure it's reflected in the Word document.
Yeah, well, so if nothing is coming to mind this time, we can always come back to it.
I do have some, well, my colleagues think of others. But I do think that from DPR, we have not heard. And maybe the reason why is that our everything or anything that we included on pesticides in our SERP is minimal. But I do remember that there was a suggestion about doing monitoring for pesticides, and that was never addressed, neither by the Air District, neither by DPR. So I would request that we go back to that and ask for an update on that. In terms of CARB, I think they have been giving updates periodically. From the City of Fresno, we have heard reports here at the steering committee meetings. Again, sometimes our reports, for instance, are a little bit, you know, bare bones, and I know that is because of lack of time, but again, I'll tie it back to my recommendation of having some sort of summary that we, from every subcommittee. So the City of Fresno is working with the rerouting study. So something coming from them, especially after the confusion of the money that was there and that it was not there, and then I think it appeared back again. So, you know, if we have something in writing that we can follow up, it will be more clear and you know, less vague. So those are my couple of recommendations.
Great, thank you. Any others in the chat or on the hands before we move on?
Yeah, we have a hand from Ivanka. And I think we might have had one from, oh yeah, we have one from Lisa as well. So we'll start with Ivanka.
Thank you. It is like Naomi just said, it's kind of bare in some places. Suggestion wise, because I don't feel like we've seen a whole lot that has been working well, still comes back to making sure that the steering committee, anything is done in a transparent process, that we are seen and at the table with these discussions before, not just a report back. This is not a committee that's supposed to be reported back to. This is a committee that's supposed to be helping make those decisions according to what the community sees fit. And I still think there's a little bit of friction there of assuming that the committee can't handle it, isn't, you know, that we're not understanding the process. And really it's about just needing better communication. And I'm not talking, just from what we've seen off of what we've had to work on so far, just making sure moving forward that we have the decision-making power that is supposed to be bestowed to this committee at the table with any of these agencies.
Thank you, Ivanka. Lisa?
I totally agree with what Ivanka said, but I also think, and I also agree with what you said about the misunderstanding with the truck reroute study and the money. I also think that when I've talked to city council members about different elements of AB 617 and what's coming down to the pike, it's like I get deer in headlights because they don't know anything. So I'm thinking, is there any way you can give an information update to the city council, whether it's monthly or whether it's a major milestone, to let them know what we're up to so they're also in the loop, since they are our partners, and we will be asking, we'll be coming to them and asking them to change some of the planning processes.
Yes.
So, you know, we have to start building those bridges and those networks with them to actually get some positive change coming down the pike. And right now, going to them and seeing the deer in the headlights look, or what the heck do you mean, you know, is not a good look for the air district.
I agree. And I would just add that, you know, it all comes down to that big missing element of the MOU that was asked and as part of the resolution that the CARB board approved in February of last year. And we have not seen anything or even received any updates of what are the efforts that are being taken place to make that happen. So, you know, that could be the place to have all these questions answered.
Thank you all. Are there any additional hands? I want to make sure we get to the CERT prioritization.
There is no hands, but there's one more comment in the chat box, so we can put it in italics and find the place. It's about a suggestion. If we are going to plant more trees, we have to make sure to remove the old logs and trim the trees that are too large.
I don't see any more hands, Erika.
Yeah, we do have an additional hand from Estela.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. Sí, lo que quería decir es que qué es lo que ha reportado de lo que hace la ciudad.
I just wanted to ask, is there a report on what the city has done? What has been reported about what the city has done?
I think that we do see here from the city during the standing updates, specifically around truck rerouting, and we've had the city as a community co-host in the past, and the city of Fresno did give an update. I want to say it was November, December, but I'll confirm with the Air District on whether or not they're getting other reports from the city that maybe could be shared or have on the queue for the agenda moving forward.
Sí, porque ¿qué va a pasar también con los canales que están sucios y las calles también a veces tienen mucha basura? ¿Qué va a pasar con esos?
And what's going to happen to the canals that are dirty, as well as the streets are very dirty?
I can put a question to ask the city about updates, status on canal and street cleaning, and
a usted, gracias.
Thanks, Estela. Okay, if there are no other comments, I'm going to ask Marie if she's ready to translate, and I will stop sharing. And while I do that, I'm going to consolidate the remaining items so that we can get them all on one page and keep moving so that we get to our 7 o'clock switch of agenda items.
Ok, aquí está para que lo puedan repasar. Ponerlo un poquito más abajo. Si tienen alguna pregunta o comentario, lo puedo cambiar en este momento. Si faltó algo que necesitaba que incluir o si quisieran agregar algo.
Buenas tardes a todos. Yo dejé otro comentario más allí en el chat. No sé si lo alcanzaron a mirar. No tengo la oportunidad de hablar, pero se me hace más fácil compartir rápido la información por el chat. Últimamente estamos mirando, no sé si hay algún programa que exista donde puedan levantar los refrigeradores, televisores, lavadoras. Todo eso nos está contaminando el subsuelo. Entonces también tenemos que buscar la manera de solucionar este problema, ya que creo que ya no recogen lavadoras como antes, ni refrigeradores. Entonces todo eso está acumulándose en los callejones de la área, no solamente en el distrito del Circo y del Triángulo, sino fuera de Fresno. Entonces hay que buscar la manera de algún programa, eso me gustaría de sugerencia para los próximos que sigue, para poder buscar la manera de que ya no contaminemos con mercurio nuestro piso. Hay muchas personas que no usan Auroson para dejar los aceites, donde quiera miramos galones de aceites tirados, entonces también tenemos que buscar la manera de solucionar eso, ya que ahorita con esta lluvia, ¿cuánta agua no se pudo ver contaminado con esos aceites que caen en el piso? Son sugerencias solamente.
Good afternoon, everybody. I actually made a suggestion on the chat line, but I guess I can actually ask my question here. My question has to do with the fact that there's a lot of wind this month, and there is a big issue with old TVs and refrigerators that have not been picked up, and they used to be picked up in the past. At the same time, with all the rain that we've been receiving in this month, we also have to deal with oil from those places like AutoZone, and those pollutants go straight into our water in the subsoil. So I was wondering, or just a suggestion, that it would be good to find a program that can take care of that, because we need to take care of our subsoil and make sure that it does not get polluted.
Great. I've noted that on my list. And that could be a question for the city or for some of the utility programs.
And Erica, while you were typing, you probably didn't see the chat. So Scott, with the city of Fresno saying that 311 is the number to call to report downed trees and branches, as well as refrigerators on the street. And he's thanking community members for keeping an eye on the community.
Excellent. Thank you all. All right. So I do want to give us a little bit of a time check to make sure that we're moving forward quickly. What I've done is consolidated the last three questions, and then we're going to move into the CERT prioritization. So we're going to go very quickly over the last three questions, so you have a little bit more time to talk about how you want to move the CERT forward. We've begun the discussion about the CERT and how you want to really make sure you're making progress on it. You don't feel like you have enough information. Let's talk about how we want to get that so that the next two meetings are, or one or two meetings are exactly what you need and hope. So let me share my screen and we'll move into the next categories. We'll take these as a bucket, free for all, answer any of those questions. I'll take all the notes and then we'll consolidate them and move into the next category. All right. So the next one, as you can see, is now three questions in one. We're going to ask any questions or comments about reporting about the air monitoring, reporting about the CERT implementation, and then your community co-host suggestions. We're going to spend 5 minutes on this, which is not a ton of time, but I do want to make sure that some of the comments that you've already put in are going to get dropped in. Don't worry about that. Those ones that are related to the CERT implementation that you've already mentioned will get put into this section. What other things have you seen or heard? Do you feel good about the reports you're getting about air monitoring? I know we heard some already about schools and other locations where the monitoring is taking place. We'll move that down. What about the CERT implementation? What about the community co-host suggestions? How can you interact and engage more as a co-host with this committee? Those are all things we can talk about for the next 5 minutes.
And Erica, I do see Lisa's hand up and possibly Eric's physical hand. So we'll go Lisa and then Eric.
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record, but yet again, you know, you guys give me this report and of all your activities and stuff, which is nice if that's the framework in which you want to hand it out. But, you know, I keep telling you, I need to see milestones and I need to see a Gantt chart of where we're at, what we're actually doing by month, and how long it is estimated for us to do major tasks. I think that gives us a better outlook of the amount of work we have ahead of us, because currently the way it is presented, I don't know when we start. I don't know when we stop as far as, you know, what are the major milestones. And as far as the community co-host suggestions, I really like tonight, I really like taking charge and taking back our committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. And I also see Lilia's hand, so why don't we do an English and Spanish? Lilia, ¿quiere hacer un comentario?
Ok, sí, nuevamente aquí estoy. Es sobre la gráfica azul, me encantaría darle las gracias al control del aire por las monitores que se pusieron actualmente en las nuevas escuelas. Ese es algo bueno para nosotros, también para nuestros niños, que aunque ya están regresando algunos niños a la escuela, quiere decir que estamos tratando de trabajar un poco mejor. Y el poner los monitores adentro de esas escuelas nos está dando una señal de que estamos trabajando por una línea bien para todos, principalmente para nuestros niños. Entonces, eso lo querían poner en el trabajo bien. Entonces, no como sugestión, sino la página del otro lado, no sé si se pueda poner de qué lado.
Sí, ahorita yo cuando lo traduzca esta Mari, le digo que lo ponga en el trabajo bien.
Yes, actually what I just wanted to give, my comment has to do with congratulating the Air District for the monitors that they have placed in our schools. I think that's important, and that sends a good signal to the community, the fact that they are implementing these monitors in our schools to continue checking the air quality.
Y también agradecerle a Marisela porque me ha corregido en algunos errores que he cometido en las redes sociales. Entonces, Marisela, muchas gracias por aclararme algunos detallitos que tenía de esto, pero esa es buena señal de que estamos trabajando en conjunto para poder tener más informada a la comunidad por medio de las redes sociales. Gracias, Marisela, y gracias, equipo.
And I also wanted to thank Marisela and the rest of the team, because Marisela has corrected me with a few mistakes that I have made on the social media. So thank you, Marisela, and thank you for the rest of the team.
Great.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And just a reminder that Eric had his hand up as well.
I had a clarifying question relative to this particular discussion and the subsequent discussion to come after this. Is this the SERP prioritization conversation? Because I wasn't really clear.
No,
process.
It's not yet. No, it's not yet. We're going to move into that right after this.
Oh, okay. No, I don't have any questions. I'll yield back my time.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay,
I see Ed and Ivanka. So Ed.
Thank you, Naimeen. I do have concerns regarding our ability as non-professionals to understand exactly what all the monitoring means, and I don't want to run ahead of this thing without making sure we have the technical support that is accurate and gives us the options of things that we could do to implement important strategies that we've learned from our monitoring. Anyway, that's my comment.
Thank you, Ed. Ivanka.
Let me, just to make sure I have Ed's comment right, are you suggesting that we need to enhance that, or that we just need to maintain what's being done right now?
I think we need to maintain it. As a non-professional group of people that care about our community, I think it's critical for us to have the support of the Air District giving us the best information that they know as air professionals. I mean, we don't all know. We don't all know how all of these different criteria pollutants affect us. And even if we did, I mean, one of the thoughts that I had, and I'm very sensitive to this. I have a cousin that literally has had his life destroyed by asthma. But as my research into asthma indicates that it's not just the environmental issues. They are certainly a part of it, and that includes the PM 2.5 that Larry was talking about, but it also includes dusts and mold and pollens and genetics. If you go and read about that, and the only reason I read about it is because I was interested in determining how much of an effect can we have with asthma. So I really value, we have the Asthma Coalition committee members that have made their life work out of that. I just think that we need to look to the professionals for some of this. And I don't want to cut out the Air District and their ability to help us make good decisions.
Thank you, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Ivanka? And then I see Vernon also has his hand raised. So Ivanka and then Vernon.
No, I'll save it for an update when we get to spending updates.
Okay.
Vernon?
Yeah, good evening, everybody. This is Vernon Hughes from CARB. And just, reflecting on Ed's comments, this is something, certainly interpretation of data, providing information to the steering committees. It's something that CARB recognizes that, we can do a better job on, and we're learning as we go here. And that's something that, we would like to work more with the districts on, and certainly with the steering committee members on as well. It just, we recognize that's a gap, informing steering committee members on analyses, on data, how to use them, et cetera. So it's something, again, we aspire to do a better job on that as well.
Thank you, Vernon. Are there any other comments? If not, I have one. I don't see anybody. As far as the co-host, I had said at the beginning of the meeting that, yes, we need to take this back because it's our meeting. And honestly, when I was asked to be part of the, to be a co-host, I was expecting to be reached out by the facilitators to discuss what my involvement would be in this meeting, and I didn't. So I think that, it cannot be expected that the co-host is going to have a more active role without even having a better understanding of what pieces of the agenda each, if the facilitator or the co-host will be, in charge of. I think that it is completely, in a way, ignoring that many of us have the capacities of being co-facilitators, of running meetings on our own even, and that, not honoring that knowledge and experience that we can bring to the table. It's really, a lost opportunity for everyone. So I think that, having a more proactive approach, just like when we have the planning meetings where we go over the agenda, that at those planning meetings, we actually are already assigning agenda items to the different, people who would like to play that role as a co-host. So just my suggestion. I see Genevieve's hand and Ryan, so we're gonna go with Genevieve first.
Hi, yeah, I just put it in the chat, so I don't mean to take up time here. But if there is a need for people to understand the true meaning of the air monitoring data, and CARB would like to do more of the educational work, perhaps I was proposing a separate meeting where just that happens, trying to take action on some of these concerns. That is just an idea. I'd like to hear more from others.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yeah, I that's 100% on me, Naimeen, and I apologize. That was definitely what I had envisioned and I promised you, and I failed. And so moving forward, there will be a much more purposeful, intentional, and I love the idea of it, you know, in the agenda setting meetings, assigning those responsibilities and getting, you know, helping the co-hosts in that manner. The one thing, and I'm curious about with the format and wanting to get as big of a group interested in this, and maybe not for topic for this, but just something to think about is not making the process intimidating for some people, you know, with co-hosting. And so maybe there's just an opportunity for us to discuss and how we get, you know, some of the members that maybe don't feel as comfortable doing some of the roles, you know, either, you know, there's stuff that the district or, you know, previous co-hosts can do to help them to do that, and trying to get as many of the steering committee members to volunteer as possible, I think is a great thing, and wanting to hear from all the steering committee members. So that'd be my one thing maybe for future discussion.
Thanks,
Great.
Ryan. Can I just respond to Ryan?
Sure, go ahead, Ivanka.
I think we're seeing what taking the committee back by the committee looks like, and weighing too much on that title of co-host. Yes, it's intimidating, but in this process that Nyameen is showing right now, I think we are jumping around. We have jumped around while we do and are trying to stay on point. By staying on point too tightly, misses the needs of the community members. So Lilia, Isabel, Estela have mentioned things that may not even be right now. Like you said, I'm italicizing it and going to put it in a different category later. But owning the space as our committee is to give that comfort level of being able to speak on whatever it is right now that's on your mind that deals with air quality. And it's not having to be as structured. I know we're trying to get through the planning of this, but the strategy moving forward would be that agenda needs to allow, like we've said before, allow for enough organic conversation that is based on the needs of the community. And so those points that have been brought up that sound like, wait, what is oil running in the gutters have to do with what we're talking about on suggestions? It has everything to do with this situation of needing the committee members to have that space to prioritize what's important. And once you know what that priority is, then actually pinpointing that to where it goes and being able to have that time to go into those details and those weeds, because in the end, you have to start with that raw information to get to that solution. So I thank you, Naimeen. I think the other members on here that are speaking up, that are just throwing stuff out there, continue to be that comfortable, whether it fits into as strict of, I know we're doing planning tonight, but in the regular steering committee meeting, this is really how the conversation needs to flow more. Like we're giving that example tonight, even though we're trying to stay on point for the planning.
So when we had the administrative conversation last month, we talked a little bit about agendas. I think this is where that would go, is really thinking about that time, the time allocations and the agendas and how those are flowing. And if I didn't reflect it appropriately, note it here, and I'll make sure that I update it to reflect those comments. What additional hands do we have, if any?
Excuse me, I have one more thing. And I know we're not supposed to get personal, but you know, we heard it here tonight, where staff has missed something and keeps apologizing. You know, I'm really sorry of hearing, you know, oops, my bad, you know, apologies or missed opportunities. We're 2 years into this, and the learning curve is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I don't see any more hands, Erika.
Great. All right, so I'm gonna do a quick check-in with our friends outside of the committee. We did have some outside updates from our CARB and city staff. I wanna make sure they're okay on time before we move into our last part of the planning, since we're a little over time. We do need to talk a little bit about SERP prioritization and how you wanna structure that. We need at least 10 minutes for that. But before we move to it, I do wanna check in with Scott and our CARB team and see if you're okay time-wise to stay a little longer.
Oh, this is Brian with CARB. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
And
what
this
about
is Scott Mosier with City? I'm fine as well.
Excellent. Okay. Then we'll keep going in this order and we'll get everyone's thoughts filled in. And I think we're probably going to be a little over time, maybe a few minutes. We'll see how this goes. But again, we're going to keep the conversation flowing in the way the committee would like. So our next, I'm going to stop share and let our Spanish speakers see the translation. Do we have, Mari, do you need to see this screen anymore? Great.
No, aquí está. Thank you, Erica. Ahorita aquí está toda la información. Si gustan repasarlo, aquí está. Y si tienen alguna pregunta o quisieran agregar algo, este sería el momento. Y nada más quería decirle también gracias a Lilia por agradecer que estamos aquí para corregirlo. Y yo diría que no era para corregir, sino que damos un poquito más de detalles acerca de los programas y qué es lo que está pasando. Sí, también me gusta que estamos pudiendo hacer esto para el público y los residentes de estas comunidades para poder mejorar la información que se está dando. Gracias a Lilia también. ¿Pero alguna sugerencia o cambios para el documento que están viendo en este momento, sino para seguir con lo demás?
Estela tiene la mano.
Ok, Estela.
Sí, bueno. Sí, pues a mí sí me gustó ser la confiatriona de la reunión cuando he sido, porque sí, ahí pues sí tiene uno la oportunidad de hablar más, como los puntos que pensamos decir en la reunión o alguna sugerencia. A mí sí me gusta porque sí puedo decir lo que siento, lo que pienso.
Just wanted to mention that I really enjoy being a co-host whenever I have a chance, because that way I have a chance to talk about my suggestions and things that I must say during the meetings. I really like it. I really like being able to be a co-host.
Great. I've just added that. And if there are no additional comments on the Spanish-speaking slides or others, we'll move on to the next section. Seeing none, we'll keep going and I will share my screen again. Again, thank you for your flexibility while we toggle back and forth. This is a quick question for you all. And if you recall from the last conversation we had, we want to understand what success looks like. And so this first question, before we get to prioritization, is a general one, and we will take one or two comments on this. But if you could fast forward to the end of 2021, what do you think success would look like in this reporting and tracking category? What data, what reports, what status updates are the most important for you to have in 2021? A lot of information gets thrown at you. A lot of it comes your way. It's hard to digest. It's complicated potentially. What's the most important information for you to have to be able to make really important decisions as a CSC and to be able to advise on strategy and next steps?
I am seeing a hand from Lisa, Erica.
Great.
For me, success is seeing a timeline on a calendar and also knowing what the expenditures and what the mile markers are. Because for me, I'm very milestone driven with financials right behind that. Because I think that drives, you know, getting tasks done within a timely manner and gets people focused on the task at hand. Short of that, you know, meetings just talking in a circle, you know, is really wasting everybody's time. More action oriented. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I see Genevieve.
Hi. Yeah, I'd like to agree with Lisa. Erica, when you said, you know, how is the committee advising? How is the committee, you know, voting or making decisions? I don't feel like we are really doing that. I feel like we're, as Lisa said, going in circles, making comments, but not really seeing anything happen. And one suggestion would be to perhaps make this committee more like a board where staff presents a proposal for us to vote on, and we can amend it or approve it in its entirety, but actually take that advisory role rather than just talking to each other and not really seeing any action. So perhaps changing how we do these meetings so that we really are having those decisions to make.
So in reality, if we go back to our original charter, it's just really put it into practice, right? Because we have decided on a decision-making mechanism, which was going to be voting. And so far, we have not voted anything, even the SERP. Our final SERP was not even voted by this steering committee. I will add one more comment before I'll give you the chance to raise your question or comment, Ed. I also think that, you know, let's don't forget what some of the residents said at the last meeting. It doesn't have to do with tracking specifically, but they did say what they want to see as success. I remember Lilian and Isabel saying, if I can go out and see clean air and be able to breathe clean air without having to drive 90 miles to the mountains, that's success. So how can we transform that into something that is trackable and measurable? Putting those milestones and putting those metrics that are missing in many of the SERP strategies. How are we going to know we make any progress if we don't have a way to measure it? So filling those gaps of those strategies that don't have metrics that we can measure, it will be a very important aspect on measuring success. And Ed, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Naimeen. I agree with the comments, but I think we lack one extremely important piece, and that's called trust. And there's lots of different interests that are represented here, and and certainly trust doesn't mean that everybody lives in harmony all the time and sings Kumbaya. But the fact that we're all attempting, I think sometimes I hear that it doesn't sound like we're all on the same page. And I just think that we need to, as we move forward, at the end of 2021, we've already established some great relationships amongst ourselves. And we can disagree together in a respectful manner. I just want to, I want to make sure that area of trust is focused on. And I'd really like to also see us actually go back to the blueprint at least once a year and spend at least one meeting going over the details of the blueprint to make sure that we are within our lane, so to speak, as we move forward with our projects and desires to make our community cleaner.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yo tengo un comentario.
Adelante, Isabel.
Mi comentario es, yo he leído un poco de los reportes que han mandado, donde dice que han dado a las personas que están quebrando las reglas, que han dado aviso de que no tienen que hacerlo, han dado multas. Mi pregunta es, ¿no es posible que le comuniquen a todo el grupo qué están haciendo con esas multas que están dando? Esa es mi pregunta.
I have a question here. I have actually read the reports that say that people that actually break the law, getting fines and different things that they have to do. But my question is it possible to understand for sure what's going on with those fines? What's happening with that?
Gracias, Isabel. Le voy a pedir a alguien del Distrito del Aire si quiere decir algo al respecto. Are there any reactions or answers that the Air District staff might want to give to Isabel now about this specific question? She said, what's happening with the fines? How are the fines being used?
So maybe I'll answer, Naimeen, from so there's Ryan. And so when we issue fines and we collect those go back into the various programs that the district runs for air pollution reduction activities. So that's like, paying for enforcement, things like that.
Okay, gracias.
Gracias, Isabel. Thank you, Ryan. I believe there are no any more hands.
Great. Well, this is helpful, and I have all of those notes. I'm going to check with Mari and see how we're doing on translation for this slide, and then I will stop share.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share my screen. We're ready to go. Ok, aquí está. Déjame ponerlo un poquito más grande para que lo puedan leer bien. ¿Algún dato que necesitaría que agregar o tendrían que hacer un cambio? Lo pueden decir en este momento. Y como no le escucho nada, a lo mejor es posible de seguir con lo que sigue. Okay, I think we're good to go, Erica.
Great, thank you. All right, so the last part of this strategic and annual planning process is to think about the CERP prioritization. So at the next meeting, you are going to be prioritizing your CERP. And what we want to make sure that we do is think about how we do that so that it's the most effective and productive process possible. There is a lot of information in your CERP. You pulled it together, but you want to understand what works best in terms of making sure that the committee understands and the Air District understands what you want to have done in what order and how you want to get updates on that. So the next few questions are related to that. I'm going to share my screen and you'll see 5 questions at once. I believe it's 5 questions at once that we're going to answer in whatever order you want. I'm going to just take notes on those. And what the question is that you'll be answering is, in preparation for the next meeting, what type of written background information do you need to receive in advance to best prepare you for the discussion you're going to have next week or next month? Do you need a refresher on the CERP? Do you feel like you need a verbal recap of the CERP strategies during the meeting itself? Do you want to have a verbal overview, or do you just want to see something in writing in advance and go from there? What level of detail do you need during this meeting? How much information do you want the Air District to bring or CARB to bring so that it's a useful and productive meeting for you? And then when we get beyond these 3 questions, we're going to ask you about technology and how do we utilize technology during the meeting to make this prioritization either work more quickly or get everyone's feedback even if they can't participate in the meeting. So we're going to ask you, would you be willing to answer a doodle poll about your CERT priorities in advance or maybe in between meetings? And the last thing is, would you be open to using other forms of technology for polling and surveying you during the meeting? If we can figure out the translation part of it, would you be open to using your cell phone during your meeting to answer some questions and you see that in real time on the screen? How can we leverage technology during this process to get your prioritization done in a way that's visualized, like Lisa's been talking about, and also actionable and task-oriented? So those are the 5 questions. We can answer and provide suggestions in any of them over the next few moments. Just want to give you a chance to give me your thoughts so that we can prepare for the next meeting and be as efficient as possible as you're prioritizing your CERT.
Okay, I think everybody needs to chime in on these questions because they're going to be very important for our next meetings.
And one thing that might be helpful too is I wanted to turn it over to Jess, and maybe you might give Naomi, what is the definition of prioritizing your CERT? Because people might think about it a little bit differently. And so maybe we'll start with Jess and we'll give her the opportunity to say what she thinks the Air District thinks you mean, and then validate that from the committee standpoint as well. So maybe we'll go to Jess, and then Naomi or others can see if that definition works with what your expectations are for this comment.
Yes, absolutely. To be brief, I think there has been a lot of acknowledgement, and certainly at the last few meetings and at the agenda setting meeting, that we have not really prioritized all of the measures, and certainly haven't prioritized most of them since like the month we adopted the CERP in 2019. So it's just long overdue, I think, to put some sort of true priority of what, and again, from the Air District perspective, what are the measures that you want to see and be brought back and be discussed as we've been outlining this whole meeting first. We obviously can't discuss every measure at every meeting, so we need to prioritize how we're going to interact with the committee on that. I wouldn't necessarily say that anything that means that the lower priority means that it won't be worked on or the district won't put the actions into place to continue pushing them forward. I would just say that the higher priority items are the ones that we're going to constantly be meeting about, perhaps make subcommittees for. But I'll definitely turn it to Naomi. I know she had some thoughts too at our agenda setting meeting.
Sure, thank you. Well, although I agree with almost everything you said, my only distinct approach will be not just in the word discuss first. I think that what we have been hearing from Ivanka and others is that we want this steering committee to have a more prominent role in what are the things that are going on, which are the projects that are going to be sent to CARB, and even what is included in those projects. So I think that more than discuss is what, in the opinion of this steering committee, are strategies that, definitely all of them are going to be implemented at one point or another, but which ones are we're going to put at the top of the list to be implemented first. Not necessarily meaning that the others are never going to be implemented. It's just like which ones go first. So it's not about discussion only, in my opinion, it's about action. And I think that the question that is in the mind of many of us is, what are the things that for community members are more important? Is it, as we were moving forward in one way, it was the trees, it was the air filters, it was the bus, replacement of the school buses and so on. So that the residents consider was important. What is next? What is the next tier, if you will? And I already see Ivanka's hand up, so I'll stop here and turn it over to Ivanka.
I agree with what you just said. To answer the questions, I think while we are saying we know they will all be implemented, I'm not comfortable with that, because I do feel like every time we meet, we have run out of another meeting, right? And so back to needing that timeline, not just for the prioritization of what are the main CERPs we're going to work on in 2021, but needing that timeline to see, so we don't forget all the other ones and what can be handled and what is being handled by the air district to get the other CERT measures to rise to the top of the list. And I don't feel comfortable that with as many measures that we have, that we can say we will meet it by a certain deadline. The other part of that, when we think of the, you know, we have the CERT measures, but the air monitoring was, we received both programs. Not every community received both programs of emission reduction and air monitors. So while we have the air monitors, is it understood by everybody? And what is that conversation look like of how long are these air monitors actually going to be in the community of the 617 community? Are we aware that these monitors are not actually permanent, even though they may federally be regulated? Are we as a committee even aware that there's an endpoint where these monitors could possibly be taken out? Like, those are questions that I think to really have a complete visual as a committee, we need to have that discussion. And so we can't just silo into talking about what are the, you know, what are the 4 or 5, however many measures we think we can accomplish in 2021, but what else is happening with those other measures at the same time. And it brings us back to what Lisa has been saying all along about needing that endpoint and that timeline.
Thank you, Ivanka. Lisa.
You know, I've been saying this for 2 years, and I don't even know why I continue to bring it up if no one's actually going to act on it. This process really does need a Gantt chart for for the 50 some odd things that we're doing. We need to know what seasons things will start and stop. Where are the major milestones as far as allocation fundings, MOUs, and execution and implementation and closeout? I mean, it doesn't have to be in great detail, but it does have to happen, because then we can manage. It is a tool in which we can manage where we're at, where we're going. Staff can manage staffing levels and assignments, and we won't be hearing anymore, oh, I missed that, I'm sorry, now you're gonna have to wait a month or 2 for that information you asked about 2 months ago. And it creates, and doing things like this where you actually have very much task driven and milestone driven, it also creates a sense of professionalism as well as a positive communication style, which creates trust by those all involved. And also too, when we hit a milestone, we can celebrate it, because right now, I really don't know what our milestones are, and it is frustrating the heck out of me. You know, I don't know what the start and end point is. You know, just look at the trees. You know, we should be planting trees like next week, and we still don't have our grant program pulled together. Now, had it been a year ago and someone sat down and said, it should take 120 days to get through okaying the grant cycle and the paperwork and getting the state to, you know, buy off on it, and this is when we can announce it and this is when we can market it, we would be in such a much better place than we are right now. And like I said, I don't know why I've brought it up for over 2 years now. And I'm assuming it's still going to fall on deaf ears and nothing will be done. And that is a real big shame on the Air District.
Thanks for that comment, Lisa. I do want to make a note. Go ahead.
Yes, there was a comment on the chat that Estela was raising her hand too.
Okay. Estela, go ahead.
¿Mande? No, yo no.
No. Esta Emilia había puesto en el chat que querías dar un comentario, Estela, pero no.
Sí quería comentar algo, pero no sé si era el punto mi comentario.
I want to make a comment, but I wasn't sure if it had to do with the topic being covered now.
But we have Eric. Sorry, Eric, I didn't see your hand, but I saw your comment on the chat, so go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. So a couple different things that I'm thinking relative to the conversation that really centers around the prioritization of our SERP, which is essentially a 900-page document. And I know it's very prescriptive and a lot to digest for a lot of folks, but I think that there are like two paths forward, right? So there's one when we're looking at the monetary capital or investment that the Air District is making, and then two, the human capital. And when we talk about human capital, we're talking about enforcement programs, right? We know that the Air District, that CARB has 14 different buckets that they identify through enforcement. We know that there is a clear delineation between those 14 programs versus some of the administrative regulations that the Air District or Air District rules that they too have to implement, specifically District Rule 9410, when we talk about E-Trip enforcement relative to our greenhouse gas reduction and emissions. So one, I think that there needs to be clarity there. And then the other piece is centered around the ROAR program and the 5 school districts that fall within the boundary, and understanding if we have gotten commitments from those districts to implement, have those MOUs been signed, right? We've heard from 1 or 2 districts that have been a part of this conversation, but have we heard from all 5, and where do they stand? And I think those are human capital needs. Those are not financial or monetary investments that the Air District is technically making, unless we're talking about like a shortage of staff, unless we're talking about education and outreach to beef up certain programs, right? We want to make sure that our community is aware of the process, whether it be around land use issues. There are narratives in the CERP that talk about land use and working with lead agencies that fall within the footprint. There's a current conversation that's boiling over right now that I've shared with the Air District around land use in the city of Fresno in the industrial zone on a rezone application. What does that look like relative to public conversations that take place and the district's role in that? What does that look like relative to the district providing comments to that public agency around mitigation efforts? So I think that there really needs to be commitments and conversations that center around what is currently being done, what the Air District is looking to do, and giving the committee and the task force really clear objectives or guidance on what is happening. Because right now, I think that there's a lot of operating in the dark. And while I recognize that the Air District is doing a lot of really amazing work, they are doing great things. I think it's important that we understand what it is that they're doing.
So just thank you for that, Eric. Just to be clear, I want to make sure I'm putting some of your comments in the right places and in the context of the meeting next week, next month, where you talk about, what you want, how you want to prioritize this SERP. Right now, I'm dropping most of this in information you need in advance. You need to understand this. But if you feel like you need this to be discussed verbally or audibly during a meeting, I'd love to hear that too, so we can make sure it's put in the right place, so we can structure that meeting and that agenda appropriately to get you all the info and the insights that you need. So right now, I'm still paraphrasing some of Eric's comments, but I would love for you to clarify if you need this information, what you're requesting for any of you that have spoken so far before the meeting, or during the meeting.
Erika, in terms of process for the next questions, many are like just more like a yes or a nay. Does it make sense to perhaps stop sharing the screen and just count the thumbs up or thumbs down for those?
Absolutely, that was a plan. Let me make sure, yes. But before I do that, I wanna make sure that I have these suggestions and comments written right, and that Mari gets the opportunity to drop hers in too.
Right,
and she sees them first.
And then I wanted to finish my comment because I think that—
Sorry, Eric, go ahead. I thought you were finished, go ahead.
Oh no, we just paused for a second so she can transcribe and get translation out. No, I thank you for that. But just relative to kind of where we're at, right? Like we're talking about financial investments that are centered around increased deployment of heavy duty clean technology vehicles, advanced clean technology vehicles, right? When I think of that, I think of the bus conversation that we've had with the city and the bus conversation that we've had with the school districts. I haven't heard much about any other deployment of resources because that is a significant pot in our SERP that we are deploying resources to, very similar to that of the air monitors, right? Like we've done so with the school districts. But I haven't heard anything outside of the heavy duty vehicle replacement. So we're talking like large scale garbage trucks. We're talking fleet vehicles relative to some that don't meet the current guidelines and what that looks like. So I think, you know, Erica, there really needs to be, as we dissect the budget of where we're at and where we're going, that those things need to be made clear by Air District staff.
Got it. Excellent. Are there any other hands before we move into the yes/no questions about kind of, do you need this information in advance? Will you be able to digest it? Will you need to hear it more verbally and talked about, you know, during the meeting itself to really make sure that everyone has the opportunity to ask and answer questions? Let's talk through that before we stop the share. So
I don't see any more hands, but I just want to translate a couple of comments on the chat. Isabel agreeing with Lisa's comment on the importance of having a calendar and goals or a timeline. And then Lilia is asking, what happens with the vehicles are operated with diesel, especially when they're idling? She see a lot of black smoke coming out of them.
Got it. Oops. All right, I see the chat is blinking, but I want to be mindful of Mari translating. I'm going to stop the share in a second if you're ready for me to, Mari, and then you can go to perfect. And then we'll go to the yes/no questions and we'll move into the status reports.
Ok, aquí está la información. Wait, así estamos en este. Ok. Parece que tengo unas palabras aquí que no están bien escritas correctamente ahorita, pero las voy a arreglar. ¿Tienen alguna información que quisieran agregar o añadir o cambiar? Okay.
Estela levantó la mano. ¿Tienes algún comentario o pregunta, Estela?
Sí, pues a mí me gustaría también que me explicaran como las gráficas que ahora mandaron. No sé qué quieren decir, como que, pues no le entiendo la verdad. Yo no entiendo esas gráficas. Sí me gustaría que me las explicaran para yo saber de qué tratan.
I would like for someone to
Y luego
explain the
también,
graphs.
pues sí son varios documentos que nos mandan. A mí me gustaría más, llegar más a fondo a que me explicaran todos esos papeles, porque sí son varios documentos que nos mandan. Por favor.
Two
Gracias.
things. If someone please could explain to me that the graphs that have been shown during the meeting, because they're hard for me to understand. And also we do receive a lot of documents, but I would like to explore those in depth by someone, if someone is able to help me out with that and explain them to me.
Gracias, Estela. Y veo también a Lilia que tiene su mano arriba. Lilia, ¿tiene una pregunta o comentario?
Sí, es relacionado con lo de que dijo Estela. Yo salí a las 5:30 de trabajar y venía caminando, manejando y prendí la computadora y venía escuchando. Al llegar a mi casa, aquí tengo el paquete, gracias por el paquete que me mandan, pero realmente quise conectarme con la agenda que es esta y no pude encontrar las gráficas que ustedes muestran en la computadora con lo que tengo aquí yo a la mano. Entonces quise conectarme y no pude conectarme, andaba bien perdida por completo. Traté de coincidir con las fechas, así como vienen con los horarios. Entonces traté de buscar en los paquetes cuál coincidía y no me adapté, solamente me estuve llevando con lo que ustedes estaban llevando, pero realmente sí me gustaría, igual que Estela, yo pienso que a la compañera Isabel, y yo pienso que a todos, que nos conectaran la gráfica que están presentando, también la tengamos nosotros completa como se está mostrando allá en la computadora, porque la computadora está en inglés, acá está en español, quizás eso es la diferencia, pero sí me gustaría en el futuro coincida lo que están poniendo ustedes en inglés, coincida en español acá, para que igual de color, para sí mismo hablar del mismo idioma y en el mismo tema. Gracias.
Just like Estela and Isabel, I would like that in the future, the documents and the graphs that you send us in Spanish match the ones that you used during your presentation. I left work a little late today, around 5:30, and I was listening to the conversation, but as soon as I got home, I tried to look for the documents that you were showing on the screen. I couldn't find them. I had the dates and everything, but I couldn't find them. So in the future, if those could match, it would be great. Thank you.
Gracias, Lilia.
Okay. I think we have everything that we need except for the yes/no questions, which I think we were going to try and do just a general poll about, are we comfortable with using technology during the CERP prioritization? And would you like to, or would you like to answer a survey in advance? So two different questions. One is about, do you want to answer a survey about the CERP in advance? The other is about, would you like to try some new technology during the meeting if we can coordinate with technology and with the translation?
Do you want to take it one at a time?
Yeah, let's do them one at a time, and let me start with a doodle poll. So you have done doodle polls before. You have answered questions about CERP prioritization via doodle poll in the past. Would you like to do that again before this meeting, or the second one, depending on how the agenda is structured? Would you like to try a doodle poll? And we can do this with an informal vote, with your thumbs up, with your raise your blue hand if the answer is yes, you would like to do a doodle poll, or do not raise your blue hand if you would not. So if you have access, it's a star. Remind me, Hannah, star 6, star 9? It's star 9, right? Star 9 for the blue hand.
So I think I just want to clarify, Erica, because I believe it's a little bit confusing of some of the comments that I read in the Spanish chat. So right now we're not voting, we're just saying, do we want to have the opportunity to respond to a doodle poll, like a survey, if you will, before our next meeting, so we don't do it right at the meeting, so prior to our next meeting?
Correct. Yeah, we're trying to figure out what the best way is to do this. As someone just mentioned, the CERP is a huge document. How do we prioritize it in 2 meetings or less? how do we make sense of all the information? How do we get a sense of what you think is most important? We're trying to figure out how to survey the committee in the most efficient way, in the way that everyone feels like they're heard. So if you would like to use a doodle poll in email that happens sometimes separate from a meeting, that's question number one. And then question number two would be, or would you like to do some technology during the meeting and really prioritize during a meeting? So two different options, two different questions, and just some possible solutions for how we might structure this conversation for the next couple of meetings.
So let's do one at a time. Let's stay first on the first one. Do we want to do a doodle or some sort of survey before the meeting to start that prioritization? I just see a couple of responses.
If you like that idea, raise your hand.
Raise your hand, or in the reaction icon, there's a little check mark or an X. So check mark or your thumbs up or your hand up is yes, or thumbs down or the cross is no, I don't want that.
So we see Ed's visual hand, Genevieve, yes, Estella, yes, Alyssa, no, Naimeen, yes. Can we get a little bit more committee members to participate?
Ed is a yes, Eric is a yes.
Isabel, yes.
Larry is a yes. Isabel is a yes.
Kimberly McCoy is giving us thumb up.
For those of you that are a little less comfortable with technology, do you prefer trying something on your cell phone, or would you like to just talk through it and do it in a completely different way? I did see a note from Ivanka in the chat about really being respectful of those people who don't necessarily have all the comfort level with technology, like the emails that go through. So we want to be thoughtful about your participation as well. If you feel like you maybe aren't as comfortable with technology, now's a great time to talk about what kind of polling you might want to do, if any, or if you just want to verbally talk about it during the meeting. If anybody feels like they're in that category, feel free to raise your hand or speak up.
A mí me gustaría, como una vez Marisela, había una encuesta y Marisela me llamó y me preguntó, me hizo las preguntas y yo les contesté. Me gustaría, como no estoy muy envuelta en la tecnología, me gustaría que fuera así.
Since I don't know much about technology, I remember at one point Marisela called me and asked me directly the questions of the questionnaire. I would like something like that.
Great. And I think that was packaged with the doodle poll, right, Mari?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. And then I think we have, do we have any people that hate the idea of a doodle poll or didn't support that the last time it was done, just to be flexible there? If you had that experience that wasn't good, let us know in the chat and we'll reflect that. Moving forward, the other comment is really around, do you want to try any new technologies during the meeting to poll or survey? We certainly have that option as well. It is up to the committee, but we want to plan the meeting and agenda around your preferences and priorities. So if you'd like to try some new technology and build that in, we are happy to do so. If you'd rather just keep it with something like a doodle poll or other discussion, that's fine too. How do you feel about new technology and trying something new in the meeting? If you like the idea, thumbs up. If you don't like the idea, show us thumbs no. So thumbs down or some kind of no. Ed's a yes. Lilia is I think that may be
Lilia, is sí or no? No.
No. Okay. No, she's not a fan. That's okay.
Yeah, so Erica, I don't
see a lot of entrenamiento, tal vez sí.
If I get some training, perhaps.
Okay, with training, maybe. Okay.
I think Larry is also a no.
Que si nos entrenan, tal vez sí.
Genevieve has a comment. She worries about the accessibility. I do also worry about it not working, and then we're losing a whole meeting. So it's kind of like we can waste time if it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's fair. And I mean, I see you have an X. Got it. Okay, great. I think I've got what I need for this, and I wanted to have one last opportunity for people to weigh out on anything we've talked about related to the reporting, tracking, prioritization conversation. Any last final thought comments before we move to standing updates? I don't see any. All right, I want to thank you all for that feedback. And I do also want to thank you all for your flexibility and patience. We're running a bit over time and we are moving to standing updates next. We have a monitoring update, subcommittee updates from truck reroute and vegetative barriers and the CARB staff. I will, in this interest of time and the schedules of other people, I will say that if anybody has a hard stop and they need to go first, I'll let that happen first so that you can move to your other commitments if you have them. So right now our order is Chai or John talking about monitoring, then Scott, then vegetative berries subcommittee, which is Nayamin, and then CARB. But if we need to go in another order, that's fine as well.
Hey, Erica, this is John. I can be real brief with my air monitoring update. Hey, everybody, this is John Klassen with the Air District. And just real quick, just wanted to let you know that we've recently posted a report summarizing the third quarter of 2020 air monitoring data to the South Central Fresno page. It's also translated into Spanish. So this summarizes data collected in our community network from July through September of last year. So that's available for you to review. And we're also working on summarizing and preparing our report for the fourth quarter of 2020, October through December. So when that is ready, we'll be posting that as well. I think it got mentioned maybe at the last meeting that our latest air monitoring site that got established was at Madison Elementary School. That's continuing to operate, measuring PM 2.5 in real time. So that's there for you to take a look at. And we're also continuing to work with Fresno Unified on the logistics of getting our last air monitor out at Edison High School. So we'll keep you updated as we progress with Fresno Unified with that. And real quick, just to comment on some of the comments that came up tonight. We do have a link on our main webpage, valleyair.org, where you can go straight to our community air monitoring web pages. So we know that was a suggestion from this committee to make it a little bit easier. So we made a change there. If you haven't seen it, it's on the right-hand side under our quick links. You can check that out and see how you can more quickly get to our community air monitoring pages. And we're also continually and actively working on the 2 projects to integrate the community air monitoring data into RAN. We haven't forgot about that. We are actively working on that. It's pretty complex to change the underlying structure of the system, but we're working through that, and we'll definitely let you know as we get that finished here soon. And also developing a map that shows in real-time data from both our regulatory and community air monitoring networks. So those are both ongoing projects, and we will keep you updated as we progress through those. That's it for my update. Thanks, Erica.
Thanks, John. Any questions for John? Seeing none, we will move to what's next on the list is Scott with the city on the truck reroute subcommittee. I think you've got some updates on last week's meeting with the city and the RFP.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Scott Mosier, City of Fresno. As was alluded to, last week our Fresno City Council approved and authorized funding in the budget, $250,000, City of Fresno, Measure C, transportation sales tax, flexible funds to go toward the study to partner with the $500,000 through AB 617. So that's very good news. We continue to work with the subcommittee. We expect to have an updated draft RFP incorporating comments by Monday. Will be distributed to the subcommittee. And I believe Air District staff will be working to schedule the follow-up subcommittee meeting. So we look forward to reaching consensus and being able to bring that draft RFP back to the full community steering committee. And in the meantime, the Air District staff and city are just getting ready for nuts and bolts of the cost sharing, the reimbursement agreement on a parallel path. So we look forward to being able to get through that process and getting things underway. Funding is all in place, looking forward to it. Also, our Economic Development Director, Lupe Perez, sends her greetings. She had a conflict, but a quick reminder that we also are co-hosting a virtual job fair tomorrow, and the steering committee received that information, I believe, on Tuesday.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions for Scott? Seeing none, we will move on to the Vegetative Barrier Subcommittee. Naimeen, I know that you have been leading that committee. Any updates for the group?
Yesenia will be presenting the update.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yesenia Venegas. I'm working with Naimeen, and I'm going to share some updates for vegetative barriers. There's going to be a tree planting with Tree Fresno and CCEJN on March 20th. And if you're interested in signing up, you can do that on the treefresno.org website. I will drop 2 links in the chat right now. And then the other link will be for the My Social Pinpoint by the Air District. It's ready to use for tree recommendations for plantings in your community. And then we would also like to receive any more feedback you may have on how we can get ideas of how we can volunteer outreach in Southwest Fresno. So yeah.
Yeah, the only thing, thank you, Yesenia, I will add is that our committee, also the Air District, informed us that they were almost done with the completion of the project that will be submitted to CARB to, you know, for approval on how the funding that was allocated for the vegetative barrier strategy will be implemented. Just to gain some time, the project will be submitted to CARB, but that's a draft that both the subcommittee and the rest of the steering committee members can give feedback on. It has all the elements of what would be considered eligible projects for this funding. So there's still a chance to get feedback, and they will be posting that, I believe, next week in the Air District's website. And then I see in the chat that there's interest in participating in the tree planting activity. The only thing you need to do is go into that link, and there is the opportunity to participate. There are 2-hour chips, and they will be providing all the trees, the tools, everything. You just need to show up for 2 hours, and it's open for children and adults, but children need to be signed up through a parent, and a parent or an adult should be present to help the kids. And that's the update. And we have a meeting that was already scheduled for the end of this month. So if you have not been joining those meetings, make sure to reach out to Song. She is sending out the meeting update.
Great, thank you. I do see no hands, but if you do have any questions about vegetative barriers, please do raise your hand now or put your question in the chat. And then we will go to CARB.
Well, thanks, Erica. So I just have the first one was a general AB 617 update. We had our board meeting in February where the CARB board considered committees for selection. And the 2 big takeaways for us is we have a lot to work to do on the committee selection process. So we'll be working on that and reaching out to committee members. And kind of combined with that, we need to find more creative ways to get resources into communities that need it that aren't officially selected. So those are 2 things that we've been working on since the board meeting. On statewide strategy updates, I know we gave one a few months ago to this community, but we have been tracking how our statewide efforts are being implemented in each community. So if there's a desire for a quick, 10-15-minute update on our like high level on our strategies, and then maybe it has worked in other communities, if there is a desire to go deeper into one of the strategies, where we could talk about it as a subcommittee, we're totally open for that if the community steering committee would like us to do that. And Eric actually got me thinking about that. So we talk about heavy duty trucks, but just today I talked to our group who works on light duty vehicles, so like passenger vehicles, and they're starting to move forward with some regulations on passenger vehicles. So if there is interest in discussing that, we're open for it. I have noticed that usually regulatory talk bleeds into with incentive talk. And if we start talking about incentives, we also like to talk about regulations. So combining those might help. We bring in somebody to talk about our passenger car regulation, and then also bring somebody in to talk about all the incentive programs, you know, related to passenger cars, if that is an interest. And just the last thing I was thinking about education that Vernon brought up, I'd like to extend that offer past air monitoring. So if there's an interest in CARB helping out with, you know, doing like a basic emissions inventory, you know, educational component workshop with the community, or anything about the health impacts of air pollution, or on how we do enforcement, you know, the basics of all those components of the program, we'd be willing to help in any way. And I think that is it. So thanks.
Thank you, Brian. And I do want to make sure that we've covered all of the updates for standing before we move to our wrap up and next steps. Seeing no additional comments and no additional questions, we will move into wrap up. I'm going to ask our Air District team if there are any comments from the public on Facebook or in any other locations via email or otherwise that we need to respond to.
We do not have any. Thank you for checking.
But there
No
is
comments.
a comment. There is a question or comment from Kim in the chat. She's asking, when are we going to have an update on the filtration systems with the school districts and the electric buses? So any reaction from the Air District on that end?
Hi, Naimeen. We're in communication with Fresno Unified and Washington Union Unified on both of those topics. I think both school districts are trying to identify what systems are going to work well for them in terms of air filtration as they're getting kids back to school. There are a lot of issues surrounding air filtration, a lot of investigation and trying to kind of put various pieces of resources. There's some federal resources, additional state resources. So there's some puzzle pieces being put together there. In addition, on the last conversation that we had with Fresno Unified regarding school buses, there was an indication that an application for buses was going to be submitted in the very near future, but it has not yet been submitted. So, you know, we're continuing to work with them on that question, and we'll hopefully have some more specific information to share in the very near future.
Has there been follow up with the school district on the application to see if they're still interested? Are they still gonna submit it or anything like that?
Yeah, hi Kimberly. The indication was that there was like their internal formal processes that they had to go through to apply for grant funding, and they were working their way through the system in order to get the approvals necessary to submit the application. But I will follow up. I'll have our team follow up tomorrow to see exactly where they're at in that process. It was just kind of a matter of going through the formality of the internal approvals.
Thank you. It would be helpful if we can schedule another school filtration subcommittee so we can get these updates, because not knowing what's going on with this program, where it's heading to. The last time we had a conversation about it, it was pretty good. The committee gave some suggestions to Fresno Unified School District as well as the other staff that was on the call, and we just haven't heard any movement on it.
Sounds good. We'll work to get the stakeholders together and get a meeting on the calendar.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
I'm Brian.
And then I think there's also a note about the other subcommittees. I think Zong did place in the chat the date of the vegetative barriers. I'm going to make sure. Yes, is vegetative barrier subcommittees 4 p.m. next Tuesday. Okay, we're moving into wrap up. If there are no more questions from the group, we do have another meeting scheduled for April 14th, which will be the next, the third installment of this planning. And we will think about how to prioritize the SERP in the next meeting. So please do look for additional background information, some of which you requested today, and then instructions for how that meeting will go. And we will be looking forward to additional feedback and co-host participation in the agenda setting meetings that happen between now and the deadline for the agenda publication. With that, I will ask if the co-host, community co-host, or host have any parting comments before we close out.
No, thank you. It was a great discussion, and I look forward to some of you joining as co-hosts in the next meeting.
Great. Air District team, did you have any additional updates before we close out?
No, just thanks for all the input. Appreciate everybody's time.
Great. Thank you all. And thank you for the extra time today. And we will see you all on April. Actually, if you can push to the next slide, Hannah, we'll see you all on April 14th. And if you'd like to be a community co-host, we do welcome those volunteers, and feel free to drop your name in the chat today or email the Air District at any time.
I can volunteer to be the community co-host, but if someone who hasn't done it before, they're more than welcome to volunteer.
Great. Eric has volunteered in the chat as well. So we've got Eric and Kimberly are both volunteering. Oh, Eric is giving it to you, Kim. So Kim, you'll be on backup unless someone else comes forward. You will be the co-host, and we will have you down to do that unless we get another volunteer between now and the scheduling date.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kimberly. All right, with that, we will say that this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Gracias and good night. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches a todas.
Bye.